Hi everybody. We are going to read one of the Magic Treehouse books with Robin. This is by Mary Pope Osborne and it's number 11, Lions at Lunchtime. I will show pictures when there are pictures, but there aren't very many in these books, so we're going to use our imagination, right?
Yep.
Yep. All right. Chapter 1.
You know.
Before lunch. Jack and Annie were walking home from the grocery store.
I said store.
Jack's pack was heavy. It held a big jar of peanut butter and a loaf of bread. "Are you going to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?" said Annie. "Or a peanut butter and honey sandwich?"
No.
Jack started to answer but stopped. "Oh man," he whispered. "What is it?" said Annie. "Look at that," said Jack. He pointed to the edge of Frog Creek Woods. In the shadow stood a small, delicate animal. It looked like a tiny deer. "It's a sign," whispered Annie. "Remember when we saw the rabbit? He was a sign of the Wild West." The deer-like creature leapt into the woods. Jack and Annie didn't stop to think. They followed as fast as they could. Jack's heavy pack thumped against his back as he ran. Finally, they stopped and looked around. "Where did she go?" he said. "I don't see her," said Annie. "Oh, wow," said Annie. She pointed up. There was the magic treehouse. It was shining in the noon sun at the top of the tallest tree in the woods. Its rope ladder swayed in the shadows below. "Where's Morgan?" said Annie. Morgan Le Fay wasn't waving at them from the window. She wasn't even at the window. "I don't know. Let's go up," said Jack. They climbed the ladder and went into the treehouse. Sunlight streamed through the window. It lit a stack of books and 2 scrolls in the corner. The ancient scrolls held the answers to the riddles Jack and Annie had solved earlier. Jack took off his heavy pack. "Did Morgan leave us a 3rd riddle?" said Annie. "Looking for someone," said a soft voice. Jack and Annie whirled around. "Morgan!" said Annie. Morgan Le Fay had appeared out of nowhere. She looked ancient and lovely in the bright light. "Do you still want to become master librarians?" she asked Jack and Annie. "So you can help me in my work?" "Yes," they said together. "Wonderful," said Morgan. Then she reached out into her robe and pulled out a scroll. "You've solved 2 riddles so far," she said. "Here is your 3rd. She handed the scroll to Annie. "And for your research," she pulled a book out from her robe and handed it to Jack. The book's cover said, "The Plains of Africa." "Africa?" said Jack. "Oh man, I've always wanted to go there." He opened the book. He and Annie stared at a picture. It showed hordes of zebras, tall giraffes, big animals with horns, and tiny deer-like creatures. "Hey, that's the animal that led us here," said Annie. "A Thompson's gazelle, I believe," Morgan said. "Where are the lions?" said Jack. "You'll find out," said Morgan. Maybe we need to plan this trip," said Jack. Morgan smiled. "No, go ahead, make your wish now." Annie pointed at the picture. "I wish we could go there," she said. "Be careful," said Morgan. "Just keep an eye out." "For what?" said Jack. "The lions, of course," she said. "Wait," said Jack. Too late. The wind had started to blow. The treehouse had started to spin. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. The treehouse spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Chapter 2. Jump, beasts, jump. Bright light flooded the treehouse again. A rustling sound came from outside the window. Annie peeked out and laughed. "Hey there," she said. Jack looked out too. A giraffe was eating leaves off the tree. It had a sweet, goofy face. Jack peered at the world beyond the giraffe. He couldn't believe his eyes. He saw a huge grassy plain, a wide river, and tons of birds and animals. More than he had ever imagined in one place. Giraffes and zebras were on the side of the river where Jack and Annie were. Thompson's gazelles and the big horned animals were on the other side. "Where are the lions?" said Jack. "I don't know," said Annie. "Do you think it's always this crowded?" "Let's find out," said Jack. He picked up the book on Africa and looked at the picture of the animals. He read aloud. "Every year in late spring, thousands of zebras and gazelles and millions of wildebeests migrate from the dry plains of Tanzania to Kenya." What does migrate mean? Said Annie. Jack pushed his glasses into place. It means they go someplace else for part of the year, like birds going south for the winter. Oh, right, said Annie. Jack turned the page to read more. Before they are safe in Kenya, the animals must first cross the Mara River. Zebras go first, then the wildebeests. The tiny gazelles swim last. Oh, said Annie in a sad voice. What's wrong? Said Jack. Poor beasts. She looked out the window. They seem afraid. On the far side of the river, the horned animals were standing at the edge of the steep bank of the river. They stared down nervously at the rushing water. Jump, beasts, jump, Annie shouted. Don't be silly. They can't hear you, said Jack. He studied the broad plain. I wonder where the lions are, he said. I don't know, but I have to go, said Annie. Go where? Said Jack. To the river to help them, she said. Help who? Said Jack. Those wild beasts on the other side, said Annie. I have to help them migrate. Are you nuts? Said Jack. Annie handed Jack the scroll and started out of the treehouse. Wait a second, said Jack. We haven't even read Morgan's riddle yet. Annie stopped on the ladder. Read it now, she said. Jack unrolled the ancient scroll and read aloud. I'm the color of gold and as sweet as can be, but beware of the danger that's all around me. What am I? Annie started down again. Annie! We'll look for the answer in a minute, said Annie. What are you doing? Jack called. But there was no stopping her. Jack watched as she hopped off the ladder. Then she started to walk through the tall grass between the zebras and giraffes. I don't believe her, he said to himself. He quickly put the Africa book back into his pack. He started down the ladder. When he stepped onto the ground, he looked around carefully. The giraffes were eating the tree leaves. The zebras were grazing in the grass. Tons of birds flapped overhead. This is okay, he thought. He just had one little question. Where are the lions? All right, friends, we'll read chapter 3 tomorrow.